Alrighty. Um, Flip tricks, basics, flip tricks, flips, rolls, that kind of thing. Let's take a look at some first. Alright. I think that all of you have a basic level of flight ability, and you should for this, I think. Being able to hover in all four orientations, being able to control your speed, momentum, controlled stationary pirouettes in both directions, obviously, and inverted as well. I think they should be a pretty fundamental core basic you should be able to do. I'm not going to tell you that, it's real easy to do, or even that there should be a certain way that you should learn those things. It's going to be different for everybody. Like I said before in the introduction, that everybody learns at a different pace and whatnot. So it may take you a little bit of time to get that down. A lot of people will say you have to practice, so much. Spend an hour a day, just trying to practice sitting in a hover. And to me, that's kind of, you know, demotivating. I'm not going to sit there and hover for, an hour. Just practice doing this for an hour. No way. I reckon maximum, give it 15 minutes a day, practicing your stationary hovers and all your four orientations. And then, on the simulator, the crashes are free. Get out there, fly around, do silly shit, and just, have some fun. That's the way to, use the simulator, I think, the most efficient use of it, because, the crashes are free. So you might as well have some fun. Enjoy it so that you enjoy the sport, you enjoy the hobby, you enjoy flying around. Fly planes, whatever. So yeah, those are the basics, I think, before you start to move on to any of the more advanced stuff. Some of the things that we'll be talking about later on, because I think that those core fundamentals, they will teach you things about dynamic lift and lift response. And one of the key things for me was, during my learning curve, actually, when I first started out, was cyclic interaction. Now, not machine cyclic interaction, but the cyclic interaction of my actual fingers on the sticks. They were, I didn't realize it when I was just trying to put in some aileron roll like this, right? It's pretty simple, right? Supposedly. But I was slowly mixing in a little bit of forward elevator, and I didn't realize, and I wondered why it looked all wonky like this, and why it was really hard to sort of control. And that was the reason that, that I was actually stirring it in with my fingers on the sticks, and I didn't sort of know that I was doing that. So it took me a while to do what I call input isolation, which is isolating exactly the input that I want to give at every specific time. So if I'm trying to just do a straight square aileron roll, I know that I have to isolate the inputs into just being that, unless I want a little bit of back elevator to move it backwards, or forward elevator to move it forwards, etc. Input isolation. Those are some of the things that you learn just as a basic, whether you're aware of it or not. I wasn't specifically aware of it when I was learning. It just kind of was a byproduct of getting used to flying around and learning those basics, hovering in all four orientations, etc. It wasn't until much later on that I discovered that, there is an actual term for it, and the term made perfect sense to me. So, input isolation. All your basics should be pretty tight. They don't need to be super tight, but if you can hover within about a 2 meter square radius, 2 meters across, 2 meters out. I think that's pretty good. If you can just hover within that 2 meter, that gives you a little bit of leeway. And you can do that in all the orientations. I think you'll be off to a really good start. Flying circuits, they're a fundamental basic for sure. You have to be able to fly some circuits. They teach you some more dynamic input control, and they help you to understand lift. How much angle of attack is too much for the amount of lift that the rotor disc is giving me at any given point. That's kind of what that teaches you. Some stall turns. They're a pretty core basic as well, I think. They're like one of the first things you learn, I think. Well, they were for me, at least. You should have these things down as well, stall turns. I think most of you actually have this stuff down. So, let's get into some flips and rolls then, shall we? Flips. Now, a lot of you have asked how I do the flips that I do. Let's just get over here a bit closer. They have a specific look to them. And to be honest, it's because I copied off of Alan Szabo and Lucas Reaver, and they have a specific way of doing it as well. So the easiest way to explain how this is you collectively pop up 90, let it drop down, and collectively pop for the return 90 into stationary upside down or inverted position. Just go over here a bit. So pop up, drop down, pop to stop into that position, and then now you have to vary. What you should focus on here is the amount of collective required, because it's not going to be anywhere near as much as what you think it would be or should be. I mean, a lot of people have a tendency to sort of drive in so much that so much collective or pitch and power that it's very rounded and very high for their flips. To keep them sort of inside themselves, it's a whole lot less. And this is where, in the introduction, I said about the flight info on the screen. Now, if you have a look at that, flight info, and you can see how much pitch, how many degrees of pitch is actually required to make it flip like this. It's nowhere near as much as what you think. See that? So the easiest way to try this out is actually to go high enough so that you can catch it in plenty of time, and just pull the cyclic. Now, depending on what model you choose to use, the cyclic speed is going to be different. That's how fast it's going to turn over or roll or any of that. So get it into a fairly stable hover at a decent sort of height. Once it sort of levels out and you're not sort of rising and falling anymore, just pull it over and let it crash. There was no collective there whatsoever. It stayed exactly where it was. So that's how much time you've got, and that's how quick it's going to turn over. So if I just pull that and pop it the other side, so I gave no lift upwards, I just let it turn within its own cyclic speed from a level hover, and then I caught it at the other side, and the same again. And you start to see how little is actually required to get it to do it. Now this is extremely true on the simulator, and that how it differs to the real thing and variation isn't really all that much. There's going to be a lot more dynamic lift changes in the real thing for sure, and depending on what model you're actually flying in the real, there will be cyclic interaction issues that you'll have to sort of deal with as well. But for the most part, it's going to be really close to this. So getting the thing to flip over, honestly, it doesn't take very much at all. And the more you can sort of learn to read how much is required input-wise and isolate out your inputs, whether it be collective or cyclic, the more sharp and tight and tidy the flips and rolls are going to be. Now this is it's something that sort of flows over into everything else. Every other trick that you learn from this point forward is those input controls and being able to isolate exactly the input you want at any given specific time throughout a trick or maneuver, so that you are genuinely controlling the machine to a really precise degree. And a lot of it is just practice on being able to read those things. But being able to identify them first is the first step. So being able to identify how much is required for each different thing. Hopefully, by me telling you this, it's already clicked. And you've gone, oh yeah, of course. And you'll be able to do those things straight away. And for a lot of you, I think that's all it's going to take, actually, to tidy up a lot of what you do. Because a lot of you are pretty good, and I'm not really sure why you're asking me how to do stuff. But there it is. That's the best explanation I've got for it at this time. That's flips. Rolls are exactly the same. Now, there's some trade-off things going on depending on power of the machine. Now, if you're one of these people who's got a really modern, new electric RC heli with the latest and greatest of everything, you're not really going to have an issue. Power issues isn't going to be your thing, but with the machine that I'm flying here, which happens to be one of the machines I actually own and fly with a fly bar on, not fly barless, you need to trade off a lot of the cyclic speed for the amount of power that you've got to actually drive the thing around. So if you listen to it, you can hear it bog the engine just a little bit when you're pushing too hard. And that was at full cyclic speed. So as the rudder, the aileron is right in the corner there. It's just staying there. And I'm just sort of bouncing the collective positive and negative to keep the thing there. And you can drive it around. So it's pretty close to exactly the same, actually. The amount of control input for flips, it's kind of the same. So learning the input controls, or the degree of input you need for each specific thing is going to be key for flips and rolls.